All right, guys. Well, this is a very, very special treat. It's been a while since we've spoken to this man, and you know him from his impressive MMA career, being one of the top guys in WEC, Strikeforce, and the UFC. A real-life superhero, this man is one of the few fighters to simultaneously serve in the U.S. Army while also fighting professionally. You also know him from his shows such as Hunting Hitler and Hard to Kill. It's a pleasure to welcome back the man himself, Tim Kennedy, and look at him back to the program. Tim, it's been too long. You stopped writing, you stopped calling. No Christmas cards. It feels like it's been too long.
It has been too long. I'm so sorry. But I got a lot of pots on the fire that I'm moving all the time.
Dude, so it's so many pots, man. I know that. Obviously, you've been super busy. We see you just completed a short film, and then you're going to be in a movie called Country. We see you've been overseas training tactics. What has life been like for you since retirement?
Pretty entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
So I own like a little over half a dozen moot companies.
Oh, wow.
Like 7 of them, and I own flat out like 4 of them. So, like lots of HR and finance meetings with CFAs and anyways, so like business crap and still military stuff, writing a book. Life's crazy and good.
Dude, that's crazy. I can't imagine going into an office and being in HR and then Tim Kennedy comes walking in going, "Hey guys, what's going on? I'm going to sort this disagreement out for you guys right now." But I was going to say, you mentioned
usually come into my office. They're like, so did you really seriously cover yourself in pig blood and then show up to the office? And I was like, well, I didn't like intentionally cover myself in pig blood. I had killed a pig and that pig's blood had gotten on me and I was running late. So I just came into the office.
It was the pig's fault, really. Yeah.
Yeah, totally was.
It's like, I will take that lower offer that you presented me to take the job. I will not negotiate, Tim. That's okay. But I was going to say, man, you mentioned the U.S. Army and the fact that you've been going overseas, and we saw some of the social media posts, obviously so many interesting photos and a lot of great captions that you put up. I know you can't really share what you're really doing over there, but what's that been like? What can you say about the experiences that you've had overseas? Because I remember you've told us some crazy stories in the past about some crazy situations that you've been in overseas, and it doesn't look like things are slowing down.
No, nothing changes. Yeah. So I was in Northwest Africa. I was doing a FID mission, Foreign Internal Defense. That's where you go and you help a government in a developing world learn how to do like first world things. Mm-hmm. So like a military to act like a real grown-up military, like treating the soldiers nicely, not like beating them to death or killing them if they do a wrong thing. Making sure that the government and militaries have like an appropriate separation, and you're teaching them, some very basic tactics so they can do their job well. It's a weird thing for people to wrap their head around. Like, the America is everywhere, like in other people's business. No, but in a way, kind of. The more stable of a world we live in, the better opportunity it is for America to thrive and for other countries to kind of like succeed in this American dream. So what we like to see is countries that have been struggling with terrorism or human trafficking, drug smuggling. Like, we don't want those nefarious acts happening. We want a nice, stable region. A stable region means that we can, as a capitalistic nation that we are, like work with that country with their imports and exports. So in the big picture, a stable, healthy world is like good for America. So that's what I'm trying to do,
Yeah, gotcha. I know that like going to so many different countries where things sort of work differently, you must be in some pretty dicey situations from time to time. I don't know if you're capable of fear, Tim, just given your history, fighting in the cage, serving in the army, but I'm just wondering, have there been any situations recently where you're like, oh wow, this is when was the last time you feared for yourself, if that's even possible?
Yeah. No. So like my soul, whatever it is, that thing in your brain that tells you that you should be scared right now, that thing is dead.
Oh.
Yeah. My soul and that thing in my brain have that in common.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like there's definitely moments where, like I'm driving through essentially the Sahara, and I have like 3 Africans in the back of my truck, an African inside of my truck, and I don't know any of these Africans, and they're kind of like looking at me and be like, I wonder how much money this dude has, and I'm like looking at them, I'm like, I wonder how many guns they have, and it's I'm like, why don't you just roll your window down a little bit and I'll turn the air conditioning on so I don't have to smell you as bad as I'm smelling you now. And while they do that, I'm kind of taking a little peek and see what kind of weapons they have, see what we've got going on here.
So you're sizing them up as you're driving.
Oh, hell yeah. All the time, profiling saves lives. Anyways, so there have been a bunch of times where I've just kind of like taken a moment and looked around being like, man, I'm the only white dude here. I'm like the only white dude here for like 100 miles. Like this is, I don't know if this is a good idea, but it's not like fear. It's more of like this realization that like, I might have to boot scoop boogaloo if something goes bad here in a minute. So I'm just going to get all my ducks in order. I'm going to cross my T's. I'm going to dot my I's. I'm going to go ahead and put an extra round in the magazine because, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, it must be a crazy feeling because you're there on business, right? You're basically working. And I know you're a very capable man. So you're probably looking at it from a very like analytical kind of perspective. Like, I'm going to do this. But is there ever a moment where you're like, oh, man, like this might be it. This might be a pretty big situation if things go wrong.
Yeah, but it's normally self-induced. So I was off the coast of Mauritania and I was doing a little swim. And so kind of where the waves crash, you swim about 20 to 30 meters past that. So you're just past how the waves are swelling. So as you're doing this open water swim, you're not getting like, beat in the head with all the waves. Well, African fishermen, they don't know how to swim. So they want to be as close to the shore as they can possibly be in their boats without ever capsizing the boats due to the waves. So the spot that I was swimming was also the spot that all the boats head up and down the coast. So I was just like cruising along and I heard this like thing, and I take a little peek over my shoulder as I was swimming and I was like, that's a boat. And it's like coming straight at me. So do I swim like into the waves? So I swam under the waves, and there was only one dude in the boat, and I think he was just going to like to load bait lines, and the Chinese have just decimated the fishing industry off the coast of Africa because they do a bunch of long line offshore fishing because it's not really regulated, and they just destroy all the habitats. So these poor fishermen are just like fighting tooth and nail for like 2 fish a day, and there's fewer and fewer of them because there's fewer and fewer fish. But so I thought I was going to get run over and chopped to bits by the motor. And then after that boat passed, I was like, all right, I'm going to swim out a little bit further to make sure that I don't get hit by other boats because there are lots of boats going up and down. So I was actually going to have the boats on the inside towards the shore of me. And I swim in, so I'm in much deeper water, maybe like a quarter mile offshore. And I kicked something. And I don't know if it was probably like a plastic water bottle. But of course, the first thing that goes in your mind is like a megalodon just grabbed my leg. Right?
Of course.
So yeah, a megalodon for sure. So I was wearing like these tiny little Roka Speedos, and I had my glasses on. And then I like fully shit myself in the Speedo. And so I'd like move my Speedo out of the way so I could get all like poop out. And then I had to swim back to shore because I was so scared. I thought I was done. So I was in that moment, almost getting chopped up by a boat and then being attacked by a megalodon in the middle of the ocean, that I realized I should probably be a little bit more responsible in my swimming and exercise technique.
There's the title for this video. Tim Kennedy recounts megalodon encounter.
Dude, I'll tell you what, Tim, down here it's hard to find toilet paper. I'd love to take you with me to the store and see if you can help me get some toilet paper with it. Similar to this fishing situation over here in Australia. But
I didn't have any toilet paper. I needed some. All I had was my Speedo.
I'll tell you what, man. Well, if there's a man that can survive without toilet paper, it's Tim Kennedy. Yeah. But we don't have these kind of tactical skills that you've picked up over the years, so it's a little bit difficult down here. But there's a lot of things that have changed, Tim, outside of obviously some of the crazy stuff that you've been doing, and that is, the world of MMA. First of all, we wanted to touch on your camp, Jackson Wink, man. We've seen this being some notable changes. Guys like Cowboy Cerrone, most recently, Diego Sanchez went to train with Josh Fabia. Cowboy Cerrone moved off and is sort of doing his own thing. There's a little bit of criticism about Coach Wink and Greg Jackson and stuff. I mean, what's your reaction to some of these criticisms and some of the negativity the gym's sort of had to deal with over the last, I suppose, couple of years?
Yeah, so they've been in it for a really long time. I have complete faith in Wink and Greg about not only how they are as businessmen and gym owners, but more importantly, what they are as coaches. And it's a real, especially like when you get up into the cowboy success, because outside of like Connor and Jon Jones, like you'd be hard pressed to find a more successful fighter than Cowboy. And when you get up into that stratosphere of real success, you get to see kind of behind the picture of these mega fight camps and how they struggle to do business. So when you start, when you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a fight, and you're training at these gyms, are you still paying that like little bit that the new fighters get to make, or is it now your responsibility to help ensure that gym and those coaches are successful? And so there's like a huge nuance, unclear, kind of ambiguous path about what that looks like and how that should look. And I think it's different for every school, from Duke Rufus to American Top Team to AK and Jackson's. It's I just trust in Mike and Winkeljohn and Greg, like as people, and I think the rest will just kind of be figured out over time.
I mean, a guy that like yourself who trains, like you mentioned, some of these African forces overseas and has seen what you've seen. What do you make of this Josh Fabia guy, man? This guy, I don't know. We looked him up. He's done some training himself. He's got some very, I don't know, some thoughts on things. What do you think about this guy?
Charlatan. I mean, like, I'm not saying he's Charles Manson, but like, I think he is more akin to like a cult leader than he does like a legit tip of the spear MMA super fight team type coach. When you're looking at like Javier Mendez and Crazy Bob Cook and the Ben Askrens and America, like you just the litany of coaches out there that are amazing coaches, and then you got like that guy way out there, who's looking at you weird, and he's slowly licking a spoon. You're just like, I'm not gonna go with that guy. I'm gonna go with this like other dude here that has like super chunky ears that like competed at the highest level in wrestling, and he has this stable of incredible coaches that fought at the highest level. Like maybe I'll go train over there, or I'll go over there with the dude licking the spoon.
What do you make of Diego being with this spoon licking guy? It was an interesting decision by him.
Yeah.
From that camp.
So Diego's gonna Diego though, right? I mean, like we have seen Diego do weirder things than this. Like Diego choosing to train with like a weirdo. That is not the weirdest thing that Diego has ever done. Let's be honest here.
I'm wondering how often do you still train like at Jackson Wink's, Tim? Because I know you got a crazy busy schedule. Do you duck in every now and then and sort of have a training session there?
Yeah, actually, I think we're gonna go back for like a month in this spring, early summer. And I mean, I still train 2 times a day. I'm still like a 13 to 17 workout a week type guy.
Jesus.
So I had 2 sick training sessions today, an hour of kickboxing and an hour of grappling at Gracie Maida. So, I'm still jacked, but like, whatever.
I'll tell you what, yeah, man. Well, you go onto social media and it's like, yep, Tim is in better shape than he was when he was fighting. So something he must be still working out. But I was going to ask you, man, obviously there's some changes in your old division, middleweight division. We just saw a fight between an old opponent of yours that you might remember called Yoel Romero and a young up-and-comer by the name of Israel Adesanya, UFC 248 main event. I'm just wondering, did you have a chance to see that fight, and what were your takeaways from it?
So I unfortunately did watch that fight. A couple of my takeaways was I was thrilled to see less amount of weird shenanigan, almost cheating type behavior from Yoel. So that was a sustain. I also was happy that he didn't there was no poop involved. Also sustain. There was no stool in any form coming out of him or that he was sitting on that he wouldn't get off of. So that was also good. But then the rest of it was just complete idiotic. I mean, that was one of the worst fights in MMA history. Maybe the worst. You know, like, I mean, you'd have to go to like back to an Anderson Silva championship fight to maybe find a worse championship fight. What was that against? Patrick Cote? Which one was
Damian Maia?
Damian Maia. What a horrible fight. But there were still more punches in that fight than in this fight.
I'm wondering, Tim, like from your perspective, because everybody's asking the question of who gets the blame for this. Is it a case where, I mean, do you look at either man and feel like either man could have pressed the action more? Is there one more to blame than the other?
No, I think they're both equally to blame. Like the challenger needs to come in there and, not do this for like the first 3 minutes of the fight. I don't even know what this is. Like, is this like pre-Tyrannosaurus Rex hands? Like, what is that, Yoel? And then to have the audacity afterwards to like start throwing stones at your opponent. And both of them have been doing this nonstop. And like from Ariel Helwani to like the post-fight interview, they're like, oh, this guy was so jacked up. It was like, no, this guy was so jacked up. It's like, why don't you just both shut your face and say like, I had a plan. And like Yoel, hey, clearly he was trying to like bait Izzy into a fight. And he was like, I don't want to be baited into like playing a brawl with you. So I'm not going to do that. And Yoel should have been like, well, I had this plan and it didn't work and I didn't have a plan B. So what you guys got was a super horrible fight. And just be honest. Like the criticism would be over if that was his plan. He's like, hey, my best way to beat him was to try to lure him and bait him into this thing. And he didn't fall for the bait. So then I just looked like an idiot. Super sorry. I think another person that's to blame that hasn't really had much negative comments thrown their way was matchmaking. You take two super explosive counter strikers and you put them in a fight against each other, and then neither of them are initiating because both of them want to counter.
Apparently matchmakers didn't want to make the fight. Dana White was saying afterwards that they were just like, they kind of foresaw this and then, they made the fight anyway. Obviously Israel wanted that fight and Dana said, all right, let's do the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like the fight in the first place. The fact that Yoel Romero was fighting for a championship after coming off of losses and, being like a habitual cheater. And obviously I don't like him. So I probably don't have the most objective about this guy. Was that a dog?
Yeah, there's the submission radio dog, and he gets very upset sometimes. And I think he remembers the UFC 178 moment that you had Yoel Romero. I was going to ask him, I mean, with Yoel, he's lost 3 fights back to back, but you're the last person in his UFC run that really came close to stopping him. And even though it's been 6 years and it's UFC 178.
I didn't hear if you said that correct. You mean after I stopped him in the second round, he didn't answer the bell? Is that what you said?
That's right. I said exactly that. So let me ask you, though. No one's had that kind of success in the UFC. He's had losses on his record, but they're not. They've been debated. So let me ask you this: How does it feel to be like the guy that really put the beating on Yoel Romero and sort of stopped, quote unquote, like you mentioned, stopped him in that round before the whole Stoolgate thing happened?
Man, I wish I could run it back. If I could turn back time, I would leave him on that stool. Is what I do. No, I don't look back that way. Of course, I wish I could go back and like change things and come out into the third round with the same focus as I had at the end of the second round instead of like celebrating and thinking the fight was over. But like he's human. I don't know how people think he's not human. I put him on Queer Street with 4 punches, and he's an Olympic level wrestler that like couldn't do anything with a whole bunch of people on the ground. So I don't know where this pretty inaccurate perspective of how good he is. He's explosive, he's dangerous, and that's I think the extent of kind of his ability, in my opinion.
Is there? I know, like, we spoke to you many times after UFC 178. Is there a part of you that it's like, man, I wish that rematch happened, before you officially retired?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I wish we could have run that fight back the very next fight. I think I was supposed to fight Rashad next at Madison Square Gardens on New Year's Eve. No. Anyways,
it was November. It was November 2016.
Yeah.
The Connor card.
Yeah. When that fight fell through, I was like begging and pleading. Joe Silva was still around at the time, being like, Joe, listen, let me tell you what I'll do. And I'll do some really grotesque things right now to you. If you let me fight Yoel. And he's like, well, I think Yoel can't make weight. You know, I was like, please.
Hey, well, man, that Joe Silva, he's a man of character, because knocking back an offer like that, geez, Louise, from Tim Kennedy, what a man of character. But I mean, you are retired now. You mentioned you saw the fight and it was a bit frustrating. Could it be enough to lure you back for one more fight, Tim? Do you think if the UFC was like, hey, Tim, we got this man Yoel Romero and there's this rematch here, would that be enough for you to consider coming back, especially with the fact that you're training 20 times a day, seemingly better shape than before?
Well, it's really easy to be in like really healthy, good shape when you're not taking like the amount of abuse that fighters put their bodies through. So like, I mean, just truth. I'm faster and stronger than I've ever been in my whole entire life. And I think a lot of that has to do with me not like pounding my body every single day in a negative way, preparing for a fight. Coming back to fight Yoel Romero, like, hey, that'd be super fun. And, like he's 40, whatever. Let me show you what this 40, whatever looks like to that guy. But no, I have too many awesome things in my life right now that I would want to come back for fighting. I still have the competition itch, which I kind of scratch with like grappling fights and judo stuff. And while I was in Africa, I was competing in Senegalese wrestling, which is like super fun.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I was sarcastic in the fun part. It's like 300-pound black dudes that are like picking me up and shaking me like a child and throwing me through the air. It's pretty humiliating.
What's not to love about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I just wish I was bigger and stronger and more African.
Yeah. It's good. I'm glad you clarified the retirement thing, because retirement MMA is a very fickle thing. It never seems to last. So it's good that at least you've got a lot of other endeavors and things to keep you busy. But I am just curious, outside of this fight against Romero, what do you think of Israel Adesanya as the champ and sort of what he's been able to do in such a remarkably short amount of time in the UFC?
He is talented for sure. Yeah, he's a talented counter striker. He's very, very good at kind of like dictating range. I also think that he has been given some pretty favorable matchups stylistically. And when you look at the kind of next wave of guys that are, I mean, the number one contender, the Freddie Mercury style copier. Did you see that at the fights?
Is that Paulo Costa?
Yeah.
Is that based on his shirt?
Yeah, well, and the makeup. I mean, the whole thing was like total Freddie Mercury from Queen. I was like, you look fantastic, sweetheart. Fantastic. But I mean, that's a tough fight for him stylistically. And I don't know how he's going to be able to dictate range with a dude that essentially is a jacked pit bull that's, a 250-pound middleweight. That's going to be.
Do you think that's a tougher fight stylistically than Yoel Romero? Because I know that Israel feels like because Paulo will come forward, he'll be able to counter him, a lot better, and it'll be a much more action-packed fight.
Well, it will be more action-packed. The Paulo Costa has a pretty tough chin, and I was using the pit bull like bulldog reference because like that's how he fights. And I'm not sure if you've like ever fought a pit bull, but it sucks. And like if you hit it in the mouth really hard, it doesn't really change what the pit bull is going to do. Like the pit bull is still going to be a pit bull.
Oh, nice.
And so like if you don't put him to sleep in those first couple of punches coming in, then you're in for a tussle with the dude that is stronger and better than you in the clinch and on the ground. So yeah, yes, I think it sets up for an easier, more exciting fight in the sense that you're going to see some cool strikes. It's also going to be a bigger battle and a harder fight for everyone else.
Do you reckon that's sort of like the toughest test for him in the division? You got guys like Darren Till, guys like Jared Cannonier is another guy that's coming up through the ranks that people expect to be, a pretty interesting fight for Israel as well.
I mean, that division is still stacked. It's kind of confusing. Like I'm not sold on Darren Till at a 185 yet. He has one fight there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of premature to be like, all right, this guy's like a legitimate contender. And talking about super fights with Jon Jones, like you should probably not be saying that right now and for a while until you have like a pretty decisive few title defenses against legitimate contenders, not dudes that are on losing streaks that stand in front of you out of striking range for 25 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring that up because that is sort of everybody's talking about this Jon Jones fight when it comes to Israel Adesanya. I guess Jon Jones sees it as a great way to make a big money paycheck because there's a lot of guys sort of gone from his division. Israel sees it as a big legacy fight. You mentioned it just before in your answer, but how do you see that fight going if those guys did match up against each other? You know Jon quite well. You've trained with him for quite some time. How would you see that matchup playing out?
Jon would murder him. I mean, like, maybe 2 rounds before you see a TKO from elbows on the ground.
Do you think it's okay? Do you think that Jon would be able to get him on the feet, or do you think it'd be a case where he would have to take him down on the ground? Because we see Jon Jones obviously wanting to stand with some of the best strikers, guys like Santos, guys like Dominic Reyes.
Yeah, it's weird that he does that against such a good striker, because you see what he does to dudes on the ground. And I really think that Jon could win that fight anywhere in the clinch, in an exciting TKO KO fashion from distance with some pretty tricky strikes. But where I really see it being a dominant fight is if that fight, and Jon is a fantastic wrestler, goes to the ground. I don't see Jon letting him back up again.
It's very fascinating. Let me ask you this about Jon. There's been a lot of criticism about some of his performances. Santos, Reyes, people have been very critical. They're sort of saying Jon Jones is not the fighter that he was once. And quite a lot of people believe that he lost that Santos and Reyes fight. So what do you make of this sort of criticism that the champ's dealing with right
now? Well deserved. I'm hoping. When he was like that hungry young lion and his personal life wasn't bleeding over in his professional life, you saw a ferocious Mike Tyson-like thing, right? And then success came along, and so did money and fame and bad decisions and DUIs and bribes and coke and strippers and with that, like, I'm not saying correlations causation, but you have definitely seen a decline in performance, or the really large exclamation mark in how a fight is viewed while those kind of life decisions are happening. So the technique, the talent, the skill is still in that fighter of Jon Jones, and for all contenders, I hope you all pray that his life is still a disaster, because if he gets his life in order, like, that dude's going to be unstoppable.
Jeez. Imagine Jan Blachowicz just praying at night. Oh, I hope Jon Jones does something bad this weekend. So.
Yeah, seriously. He's like, all right, if Jon goes to the strip club, I need somebody to sneak in a kilo of coke. And I mean the good stuff from Medellin, because that just put it on Jon's table for free. Who will do that for me? I got $1 million.
Yeah, just Jan in a wig.
Tim's like, I'm in a third world country. I can have that in an hour.
I can facilitate that, by the way. But let me just quickly, as we wrap up on Jon, did you notice any kind of different when you trained with him and you were in the gym? He obviously went through a lot of highs and lows, and we saw those in his performances. But did you notice any differences with the Jon that you sort of dealt with on a daily basis when you guys were training partners?
Man, when he's right, I hated training with him because he was so dominant, and then when he was off, like if he had a night where he went out, I was like, I could smell it. You could smell the booze, you could smell the weed, or you could smell. You like as an athlete, like when you start sweating, all those things come out. And when I would smell that, I would be like, all right, today's my day. I'm gonna get his back, or let's I'm gonna push the pace. With the 4th, 5th minute of these rounds, he's gonna deal with a more aggressive version. So
Did it make much of a difference? Was it
Yeah.
enough to sort of, get a bit of an edge over him, or was it still just absolute pain?
Well, I mean, it's always absolute pain, but there's like I got my best looks on nights that he was looking or days after he had nights where he was being his worst.
All right, Tim. Well, listen, we love catching up with you, but before we go, we know you got a bunch of projects coming up. There's a couple of movies. I know you've just finished a short film. You've got another film coming up that you'll be shooting, and obviously all the stuff that you're doing with your companies. What can you sort of share with us? What could all the Tim Kennedy fans, look out for? I know you've got In Country coming up next, so that's going to be exciting to see that movie. You've got the short film. You've got you always have TV shows and things happening as well. So what's happening that people need to check out?
I'm almost done with a book. And
is that going to be about your MMA run, or is that going to be focused on the outside stuff?
It's like me taking my clothes off, all of it, walking into the Pacific Ocean and swimming out into the fog, maybe thinking about killing myself when I have a couple of women pregnant and I just crashed my motorcycle. 9/11 just happened, and I think I have AIDS. This is a true story. And yeah. And me swimming out until I can't figure out which direction a shore is, and I think I'm going to die. And this is like not the worst day of my life.
This was Tuesday of last week.
So the book is everything, but mostly bad decisions with like self-deprecating humor. From getting blown up in Afghanistan to long gunfights to killing the number 2 terrorist on the planet to fighting for 2 world titles and losing them. It's all in there.
When is the book coming out? Because we're already excited for it.
We're probably like 6 months from a final product. Like we have it all there because it was just in my head and we had to put it on paper. And then it's taking that and putting it into, because some of it is so unbelievable that we have to support it with contextual information. Otherwise, there's no way that people are going to believe that, like, wait a second. So you got blown up. You're in a 3-day gunfight. You had just shit yourself, and you wake up underneath the Humvee, and that is halfway through halfway through the 6-day gunfight. And it's like, yes, that is all correct. So we have to like put in a timeline in a chronological way, other stuff. So you realize that this really was my life.
Jeez, imagine being the editor of that book and reading some of those stories and be like, listen, Tim, I have a family. We can't put this story out. So
those were conversations. You're like, hey, is it okay that we tell people that your dad stole a plane full of cocaine from Pablo Escobar? And I was like, Pablo's dead, bro. We can totally do this. You're like, well, can we ask your dad? I'm like, I don't know. You can ask my dad. I'm putting it in the book.
You're like, I'm Tim Kennedy. I'm in HR. I say it's approved.
Well, there you guys go. When he's not one of the biggest HR professionals in the world, he's out there making a difference. Make sure to check Tim out on social media for his latest projects at Tim Kennedy MMA on Twitter and Instagram. Tim, we could talk to you all day, man. Thank you so much for coming onto the program. It's always an honor speaking with you, and let's not leave it so long next time. There's definitely a lot of stuff to talk about every time you come on.
Sounds good, gentlemen.
Thanks.
God bless.
Bye.
Yep.